All right. Our next bill up is House Concurrent Resolution 6, Representative Wright's bill, and we've got Mr. Haney here to help present that.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Ryan Haney here representing U.S. term limits, members of the committee. This might be a little bit like Groundhog's Day. I know last session we had some heavy debate on this issue on the floor. It passed out of this committee. Representative Wright apologized he couldn't be here today. He has some day job business back in Covington. Otherwise, he would have made sure he'd scheduled to be here. This issue was, as I said, pretty well debated. The resolution simply is a statement of the Louisiana legislature to request an Article 5 Convention of States on the sole subject of U.S. term limits to be basically talked about in a Convention of States. The process would require 35 total states to pass the exact same language for any convention to actually take place. The convention, when it would, if it be called, would have to have a consensus, a majority of states agreeing to terms, and then it would have to come back to the legislature to be ratified. The legislature, actually under a Mark Abraham piece of legislation, has pretty clear instructions on how y'all would select who would go to this convention. It would be somebody the legislature would select. The legislature would task that individual with the parameters in which the legislature was comfortable with. And so we feel it's a pretty buttoned down, narrowly crafted resolution. If there's questions, I have somebody with far more knowledge than me that's willing to get into the constitutional conversations we had on the floor. We do anticipate this bill comes on the floor, we'll have a much deeper conversation, but we're glad to do it at Chairwoman's Committee at any time. And with that, I ask for support.
Okay. A question from Senator Full.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So some of the concerns I've heard is that maybe if we do this, it would open up a convention to look at all areas of the Constitution. But it's my understanding from speaking with you that you believe it would only address term limits.
Correct. So, where people I think have confusion is that it's in our country's history, nobody's ever got to 35 states to all agree, right, to do something. I think people are kind of scared of the unknown. We feel very confident, and I'm going to invite Aaron up if he wants to give a couple of seconds. I think it's helpful before we get to floor, if we have 5 minutes, Madam Chairwoman, to touch on that. We think it's inaccurate that it could be a runaway convention, that they could go after other items in a convention. We think that the resolution that we have in front of you guys is very specific to one issue, and that would be the only authority granted. And the person that you send to that convention would have to be charged by you guys in a very specific way. And so unless the legislature wanted it to do more, and I think it's almost an impossibility, but there's been some mostly national individuals and groups who have, I guess, put some doubt in that.
I appreciate that. I'll just listen to the witness.
But yeah, I'll let Aaron address it.
Okay, if you would introduce yourself, please, sir.
Yes, my name is Aaron Duquette, and I'm with U.S. Term Limits. I want to thank the committee for having us today. Just to speak real briefly to the concern, right, about if this convention can be limited. I can speak to that in a number of ways. 2/3 of the states, per Article 5 in the Constitution, and I would encourage any member to read it over again, right in the Constitution. It's very clear that 2/3 of the state legislatures have to pass the same resolution on the same topic in order for this convention to be triggered. And the explicit purpose of that convention is predetermined right within Article 5 itself. It calls itself a convention to propose amendments. So its purpose is limited, number one, to only proposals, right? So there's no effective law within the convention itself. It simply proposes an amendment like Congress might propose an amendment. And then that has to go back to the state legislatures. 38 state legislatures need to ratify whatever comes out of that. So that means only 13 states are required to shoot anything down. So nothing's open. The Constitution is never open in that process any more than any of the other amendments we've had to the Constitution have opened the Constitution. It's conflated with the idea of a constitutional convention, which is an open, right, sort of plenary powers convention to draft a whole new new
and
Constitution.
I jump in. That's where a lot of the confusion has came. Is there's two different ways to amend the Constitution. Congress can do it, they can call a convention, and that is a different beast than what we're talking about with the states' rights side of it, where the states and the legislatures can call it. A lot of this, I've heard quotes from Anthony Scalia and other scholars, and as I understand, in the full context of their statements, they were not talking about an Article 5 convention, if that's correct, Aaron. They were speaking about a constitutional convention as called by Congress, which is an option given by our forefathers as well, but not the option that we're looking to utilize with this.
The fact that this is an Article 5 convention is simply a convention limited to proposing amendments. It's actually demonstrated in the Madison's notes on the Philadelphia Convention, where they drafted the Constitution. Actually, Roger Sherman in Connecticut actually proposed toward the end striking out parts of Article 5 so that it actually did allow that Article 5 would be a con or constitutional convention with broad powers. That was voted down 7-3. Later on in Congress, he actually said, all that is granted us by the 5th article is that whenever we shall think it necessary, we may propose amendments to the Constitution, not that we may propose to repeal the old and substitute a new one. So the guy that actually wanted it to allow a full constitutional convention within Article 5 and it was shot down, he had later on is documented having said that this is a limited convention. So.
And just as a reminder to the committee, last term, we did pass a resolution that many of us, voted on that would set up a convention to address 3 issues: term limits, federal overreach, and federal funding.
Right.
So the idea of doing this separately is to say, maybe there's not 34 states that agree with doing a convention for those 3 topics, right, but maybe there's 34 states that agree with doing this one topic, term limits. Yep. And so I think that is the thinking. There's only a handful of states to date that have passed this term limits resolution. 34 of them have to pass the exact same resolution, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So, and then last year, then Representative Abraham brought a resolution that kind of laid out for the state of Louisiana what would the process look like for ratifying whatever came out of the Constitution. Or, no, how we would select our delegates for the Constitution. So, and we supported that.
And the power's completely in the legislature to do all that.
Yeah. So we have kind of dealt with this topic twice in the last 4 years. Personally, I see this as just kind of another step in that very, very, very long process. You've probably gotten, some emails and things like that on this topic from, as you said, as Aaron said, from folks all around the country. We have both of your cards here in support. There was an email sent to the committee that I'll ask, Matt, there's Matt, that I'll ask our attorney to pass out in opposition to this resolution, similar to some of those that you've probably received emails on, as I have.
Well, members, I just want to thank you guys. For me, this has been a bit of a return to civics class. So I think everybody's getting their civics class credit on this Article 5 process.
All right, so we do have, I was counting noses again, we do have a quorum. Is there any more discussion on this resolution? I don't have any other folks on the board. What's the pleasure of the committee? Senator Milligan moves favorable on, where are we? HCR 6. Any objection? Seeing none, then we'll move HCR 6 favorable.
Thank you, Chairwoman, members of the committee. Y'all have a great weekend and happy Father's Day to the fathers.
Thank you.